Yeah, there we are.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello. Good evening. And welcome to the February edition of our Azure First Day event. And as always, we have some great content for you. We'll start with Rory Preddy, who will help us build better accessible applications on Azure. And then we'll continue with Anne van den Berg, who will show us to blog about all sorts of stuff we learned this evening. And how to do this using Markdown and Azure DevOps. And then we close with Esther Bartel and Freek Bersen with a session on, help me here, Luke. Oh, we are going to do a session on ARM templates and how to empower them with Project Bicep. So that will be great as well. So again, if you have any questions for our speakers in the chat, we'll try to cover as many at the end of the session. And Rory was also willing to answer them during the session. He just told us. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll make sure we ask our speakers. And I'm not forgetting anything, right, Luke? So
no,
I think we can get Rory in here. So Rory, are you here?
I am here and ready.
Perfect. Rory is a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I'm not going to ruin your entire intro slide because I have a tendency to do that to every of our speakers. So I'm not going to do that, but you're going to talk about programming for accessibility. And as a developer, I'm a C# developer. Hopefully we're getting more and more aware on possible lingering issues around accessibility and trying to do our best and also be in an accessible user group. We try, and we hope we will get to try even harder after your session. But what was your personal driver to do a session on this very important issue?
I didn't want to get into teary-eyed mode already, but
Sorry.
So no, it's all right. I think it's important because it also makes the audience understand that this is dear to me. So I've had about 7 or 8 back operations. So I am a dwarf, achondroplasia, and I've had 7 or 8 back operations. And I remember sitting in a hospital. I was on a ventilator and learning to breathe and walk again. And I said to myself, this has to be for a reason. This has to be for a purpose. And that mindset, that idea that my experiences would drive me into being able to evangelize, doing more for other people and empowering them, has actually kept with me all of these years, though. And every time that it gets tough and every time I have to put in a little bit more effort, I think of that moment and I say to myself, make it count. And that's really what the core of accessibility is, to make that experience count for the people that use your systems.
Wow, such a great answer. It's such a personal driver, and thank you for sharing because that's very personal. So thank you. And I think we're out of questions for now. So again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and the floor is yours.
Great. I'm going to share my screen because I have some really great content to share with you. You can see my screen? Yes. Okay. There we go. A nice little clicker here. As part of my midlife crisis, I've bought myself a lot of nice toys, and you'll see my midlife crisis car coming up. So you can follow me at Rory Preddy. I try to do some memes. I try to do accessibility updates, and I'm hopelessly in love with Java all these years for the last 20 years. So we do a lot of Azure and Java updates. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go back there. Okay, so my midlife crisis, my car, with my car pedals. Now, these have only failed me once, and this is really the story, the narrative I want to say to you is because you can see there's a bolt on. So I actually bolted them on there. And this is similar to a lot of other things that I find myself getting into because I bolt on things. And historically, you find that people who are differently abled really bolt on to get around that. You can see here I am getting coffee, there's this Ethiopian decaf. That's a horrible picture when you have Ethiopian decaf there. Decaf should have never been invented. It's like skim milk. It's either milk or skim. You don't do one or the other. And The problem with bolt-on is that you waken the Hydra, and the Hydra is a mythical creature that when you chop the one head off, then the other head grows up, and that is the bug Hydra. Because when you look at accessibility and software, when you chop the one head of the accessible Hydra off, then it kind of comes up there, because looking at accessibility as bolt-on never works, because it's part of the process. And this is the story of what I want to tell you, because I want to try pop your empathy bubble. Sounds a little bit weird when I say that, but you all live in an empathy bubble. And I know this because you're not me and I'm not you. And you can't be me, because when you look at my experiences and your experiences, they differ. And it's just the nature of being human, though. And how do we get out of those bubbles? Because if you don't get out of those bubbles, then you're going to design for accessibility, but you ain't going to know that over there is almost impossible. And I remember when learning to walk, I had about a 1 centimeter gap that I had to get over. And I looked at that gap and I realized that no one had actually catered for that. And so let's start with a plan on how we can actually get you more accessible. So first, I'm going to define or undefine accessibility. Then I'm going to understand your organization's unique accessibility motivators. And I'm going to show you the difference between a stick and a carrot. I'm going to set achievable interim milestones, and then tools, and finally measure, improve, and automate. So let's start with what is accessibility. And when you remember the bolt-on, accessibility isn't bolt-on. So accessibility is the design of products, services, and environments so that everyone, including people with disabilities, can fully experience them. And we at Microsoft believe that inclusive product design with compliance with productivity leads to innovation. When you look at the world without those rose-colored glasses, you start to look at the world differently. And you realize that accessibility is innovation. And I'm going to show you how through this process and lead you on the path of innovation. We need to discuss disability. The word doesn't exist. Now, when you go to the doctor and you're not feeling too good, and you say, "Oh, doc, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather," he goes, "I think you've got the disability." The only time that you feel disabled is when you have mismatched human interaction. And I know this. As part of my midlife crisis, I bought one of those BMI scales. I got onto it. I put my weight at the time, 65 kilos. I've lost 15 kilos, I'm 50 kilos, whoop whoop for me. And then I put my height, 4'1" or 120 centimeters, and it had a crawling baby and a very tall man. I thought, I'm not really that tall. I'm going to put the baby. And I got on, it did its little calculation, and then it called me horrible names. And I was thinking, what I really feel disabled right now. And I was thinking, like into a smoky room kind of design session about someone designing that scale, and they weren't really designing for people who weren't them, and I felt disabled. And I remember that moment then I said, AI is going to think I am disabled for the rest of my existence. I need to actually change it. And I've been speaking on how to make AI accessible also. So we've designed disability and accessibility. Let's also look at some principles around accessibility. There are only 4 principles. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they're defined by the Web Center for Accessible Guidelines as perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Perceivable, can you see it? So that's visual impaired or the silver generation, so people over the age of 65, and they need help to be able to see certain things. And I know I'm getting to that age because I need glasses now. So perceivable, can you see it? Operable, can you use it? If you don't have fully use of your arms, you're an amputee, you want to be able to operate your systems with a design principle. Understandable, can you understand it? And what we're seeing also now with WCAG, the Web Center for Accessible Guidelines, is that they've also included recently in understandable ADHD, autism spectrum, because the last thing you want to do is make your system not being able to use or stressful. And lastly, robust. It won't break future technologies. So, for example, a responsive design system, if you turn it landscape to portrait, it shouldn't break your systems. And those are really the only 4 real principles I want to take with it. And we're going to go through a few technical details when we go through our demo a little bit later on. So now let's define motivators. First of all, a stick legislation, and we have the US 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act and the EU Parliament Directive on Digital Accessibility that says if you're not WCAG 2.1 AA compliant, then like Canada, you will get a $100,000 fine per day for civil-facing websites. And, you know, at Microsoft, we're also kind of seeing that because we want to kind of get ahead of the curve. So everything we kind of do now is accessible. You go to Microsoft.com, you go to the Office sites, you even go to Azure. It's all accessible because we see that the stick is coming there and we don't want to be bedonderd. That's an Afrikaans word for hit really hard. And we're seeing that also for GDPR. Remember GDPR now, everything has a pop-up and a password and everything, and, you know, trying to just browse the website is impossible. The same thing's going to happen with legislation. But I'm a big belief on the carrot. And it's summed up with the quality of life quote by Bill Gates. For most of human history, we put our innovative capacity in improving the quantity of life. Because we're living longer, our focus is starting to shift towards improving the quality of life. We're becoming altruistic. We want to improve people's lives. So now we've defined that. Now we can also see, wait a second, I want to take the altruistic approach and I want to become aware of people's difficulties. I want to go from pity to sympathy to empathy and to compassion. But how do I do that? How do I improve my emotional engagement? And you do that by becoming those people. By stepping out of your empathy bubble, and you use persona spectrums, Claudia, Ashley, and Ron. So Ron's an 82-year-old retired, multiple conditions, arthritis, losing his hearing, might have visual impairment also. You take Ron and then you build around your system. So you go and you test these systems. Now you can go and get those labs, alphagov.github.io, accessibility personas, and you start to realize, wait a second, the bubble that I was in, I can actually pop it because I can become these people. And you start to look at inclusive design. Now, inclusive design is recognize exclusion. Understand that you're excluding Ron. Then once you do that, you can solve for one, extend to many. I'm going to give you an example very soon on how to do that. And finally, learn from diversity. Have diverse teams. Learn, understand how and why you're limited by your bias and also your using your persona spectrum. So let's take a persona spectrum. This is a very common one, and this is an amputee, so someone who has limited use of their arms or no arm. And we have on the top here someone who is, wait, there we go, someone who has one arm. Then we have an arm injury, so someone who might be like me, use the mouse way too often. You can see I've got my nice trackpad and and then we have a new parent. And I know what you're saying, Rory, new parents really don't have a disability, but I promise you, you've been a parent, you're financially sleep deprived, stressed. You're really not able to use your full body. Then now, if you go to your manager, your business partner, your customers, and you say, I want to design a system for like an amputee for the one-armed person. Now, the US Center for Statistics says that only 26,000 people actually have an amputee in America, but the temporary disabled people, motorcycle accident or arm injury, 13 million. Situational dependency, accessible issues, 8 million. So in total, 21 million people. So now we've solved for one, extended to many. Now, when you take people with accessible needs in the world, there are 1 billion people. Now, the people who are vested interest in those people, friends, families, loved ones, 3 billion people. That's half the world nearly that needs accessible software. Now you can see exactly how you can extend this and why this is important, because now you can be innovative. You can approach these people, the silver generation, people over 65, it's a $1 trillion industry that you're not catering for. We take our persona spectrums, we superimpose them on our journey. So we've got registration, navigation, and checkout. These are ticketing, buying systems back when airlines were safe, actually. Site landing, preferences, registration, help logins, add to cart, search flights, help, checkout ticketing, and then experience on a survey. So we superimpose it there and everything changes. We've changed the way that we look at innovation. We're responsive design for site landing, capture for registration, font and color options, accessibility help, single sign-on, callback help, one button access, And then right at the end, my favorite, AI adjustment. AI will become aware of your issues. And I know this because I did a talk on how to make Alexa more accessible. Because I noticed that when I screamed at Alexa, it never really understood I was angry. So I taught an AI emotion. You can, I taught it sarcasm actually, because it's the hardest emotion to understand. And if you go into Cortana or Siri or Alexa, right now they understand emotion because they have emotional teams in the background adjusting their entire experience according to your emotion and your accessibility. So we already see now Solve for One, Extend to Many, and AI adjustment. Automate. Let's look at milestones now. So yes, bolt-on right at the end. We must become accessible. When the shippable project had gone out and we deployed the system, ain't gonna happen. So shift left. So I'm not going to jump out there because I think my headphones will get caught though. But traditionally, we've seen a huge movement from software development, and we're shifting left to be able to bring in smaller investments to make the shippable product really more accessible. So you've got accessibility not bolted on right at the end, but towards the entire process of your design process. Now, let's see how you can actually get this done with the whole reason that you're here is tools. Introducing the open source accessibility insights. Now we've partnered with DQ Labs. They make a really nice rules engine. And we said, okay, great. Let's now build this into everything, because at the core of it, Microsoft wants to be accessible for themselves. So when we delivered Office and Microsoft.com, we made it accessible and we open sourced it, and we open source accessibility insights for web, for Windows, Android, CI/CD, and for Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. You can get them all in accessibilityinsights.io. And what actually does it do? Now, Accessibility Insights is a check that you can check throughout your entire development process to make sure that you're accessible. And it uses WCAG 2.1 AA compliance. And I'm going to do a demo for you now. And you can tie this in. This is in .NET. I know I'm a Java developer, but this is .NET. And you can see here, we've got the test run. And you can run this in Azure DevOps with your accessibility insights. And we've even got some nice demos here that you can do, github.com/Microsoft X-pipeline samples. And you get a nice little dashboard there, and we're going to go through that a little bit later. But what about if you can't actually check or test, or you've got a legacy systems? What do you do there? And we have something called Immersive Reader. And you're familiar with Immersive Reader. If you have Word and Office and PowerPoint or even Microsoft Edge, it comes with Accessibility Reader built in. And what it does, it makes your entire experience accessible just with a click of a button. So here's the accessibility little button. You click on it. This is with OneNote or Teams, and you get an accessibility. And I'm going to do a demo for you there. So you can take your legacy system and right at the end, if you have to, bolt it on. So what can Immersive Reader do? It can read language, can understand nouns, adjective, pronouns, can translate to 60 languages. We're going to do a demo now. Parlez-vous français? I'm going to show you how. You can do pronunciations, syllables, and then also picture dictionary on common English terms. Now, we've shown you how to bolt on, we've showed you how to test, but what about AI? Now, we've also got services, and my favorite is computer vision, that can make your systems accessible by accentuating, helping your systems become more accessible. My favorite is computer vision. So here's a picture of 3 individuals, Satya, Bill Gates, and Steve Ballmer. And you can see there, it's scanning them, it's seeing how old they are, if they're happy or sad, but most importantly, it's giving a caption. Satya Nadella, Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer posing for a photo, confidence 97%. Captioning and alt image for visual impairment is the most important and most difficult thing that people battle with. And it's baked into a lot of our systems, but it's also in Azure Computer Vision. Now we're going to do a demo, and I've got so many nice coding demos. So enough slides, let's go into our demo. So the first thing I want to show you is the JUnit results that I just ran right now. So you can go into your pipelines. This is Azure DevOps, and I've got my pipeline created here for my X Core Maven setups. And you're thinking, oh wow, Rory, this is very kind of easy for you to show after the fact. But I'm going to actually, because I've got enough time here, I'm going to create one on the fly. Let's go into here, pipelines. We're going to go new pipeline there. I always like going off script. It gets the hosts like really confused here. So we're going to go GitHub here. We're going to go select. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a project that I've created beforehand. And this project here has all my test results for a very simple page there. It's got a normal page there, and that hasn't got any errors. And it's got a little JUnit test there that I can run. And I'm going to put that into an Azure pipeline. And I'm going to show you how to actually create an accessible Azure pipeline right now. So I've got my tests there. So you've got your test pipelines there, and I'm going to search for Maven there. I've got my my project there, Xcore Maven. I've selected configure your pipeline. I'm going to say Maven because we've got some tests. I've got all of the nice Maven commands already built for me there. I'm going to go save and run. And click the save and run, and I have accessible DevOps pipeline. It's going to test my pages, or can test a number of other pages, and it isn't actually more difficult than that. And that's DevOps with testing, and it uses the same engine as Accessibility Insights, and we're going to see exactly what that is right now, the DQ Labs on how to get your violations. So let's look at also the Accessibility Insights while that pipeline is running there. So this is the w3.org accessible before and after demonstration. So I've got my inaccessible page and my accessible page. I click on my accessible page, and you notice there isn't any change though, because what the people have done in the background, they've made the page inaccessible by doing horrible things. They've removed tab stops, they've removed lists, they've haven't got image out, and I can test this by going to that image and going inspect, and you'll see there suddenly now there is no alt tag linked to that image. I also, if I go into my list items here and I go inspect, you'll see there that they've actually done BR tags instead of list tags. So a screen reader won't actually read that. And if I go into the tab stops here, you'll notice also there's no tab stops, because they've removed or modified the tab stops. Now I want to check what the issues are. So I go into my Chrome or Edge plugin there called Accessibility Insights for Web, and I go fast pass. I want to do it very quickly. There's an assessment that you can go through. It takes about 45 minutes. And this is a very detailed, sometimes you can't test everything with automation, but I want to do an automation to show you how it's easy. And in the same library that I used for DevOps there, I'm going to go into my accessibility fastpass there, and watch this. Run fastpass, run my rules there. Color contrast is wrong, language is wrong, alt images are wrong there, and I can test there, and I can export that to my my DevOps. But more importantly here, let's just minimize that. Go back into Chrome. Let's make that smaller. Wow, this is what happens when you go way too many windows. Let's close that for a second. Let's try that again. I love going off script. There we go. And now it's giving me a visual representation of every problem on my page. I can click on that problem there. There's no alt tags there. I can go file the issue straight into GitHub, and using that tool, I can also go and inspect any of the items there, and it'll give me the solution to change it. You can see there, fix one of the problems, inspect the HTML, copy the failure detail, and I've got all of these other tools that I can actually use. For example, tab stops. Remember I said there's no tab stops there? I'm going to switch on tab stops there, and now I can see, that it doesn't actually tab out. I completely get lost, and if I go to the accessible page here, and it tab stops here, you'll see that it tabs there. It's your one-stop shop, but this library is also for DevOps. And now let's also go back into our next demo. Let's close that. We've got our pipelines. Yeah, our job ran. We did our job on the fly there. We've got our jobs there. We've got our Maven projects there. It ran a clean build there right at the bottom. And we've got our 28 tests there, to 35 tests. And then we can go into our dashboards, into our boards there. Let's go to our boards. Now I want my dashboard. I created one earlier today. There we go. My dashboards, and my manager's happy. I'm happy, and I'm keeping myself honest because I'm testing, obviously, all the time with my Azure DevOps. Next thing I want to show you is Immersive Reader. So Immersive Reader is a tool that implements proven technologies to read comprehensive. And I've coded this in Java. You can do it in .NET also. Let's go here. Sorry, I'm clicking way too many screens here. I want to go into my Visual Studio Code, and I want to go into my quick.java. Yeah, there we go. Into Immersive Reader. Now, the Immersive Reader, I've got my token and it's running on, wait, let me just get you guys back there. I've lost the Teams the Thursday. I've got my Azure Thursday there. You've got beautiful face there, Deben. And I want to go back here and I want my Immersive Reader. So I've got my Immersive Reader. I've got my cognitive service there. I've set it up. It's simple. It's free for the first 1,000,000 characters, and then 3 cents for every other 1,000,000 characters. And then I've just got a little bit of JavaScript here that says get the token to authenticate, and then pop up the Immersive Reader, launch Immersive Reader. And I've got my text here. I want to do that page in, what language would you like to meet? German. Choose a language. Dutch, German, let's do German. So I'm going to go back to Immersive Reader, and now I'm going to make this entire page accessible by clicking that little button there, JavaScript, and it's coming up there, and now I can read it.
Immersive Reader is a tool that implements proven tech.
I can also go in and change it for line items here, include the grammar, I can include the line focus, picture dictionary, and now I'm going to change the language here to German, Germany, the entire document. And that took me 3 seconds.
Das bewährte Techniken implementiert, das Leseverständnis für neu aufkommende.
And that is Immersive Reader, and it's so powerful because it's just, you can just bolt it on at the end of it. So there is no excuse not to create accessible software. I've shown you DevOps, I've shown you accessible insights, and now with Immersive Reader. And the final thing I want to show you is the captioning bot. Now, interestingly enough, we entered a captioning competition called No Caps, and it's run by Facebook, and it says, can you beat human readable captioning? And it's not as easy as you think. So let's take this person here. Caption that though. So for me, it's a guy wearing a red baseball cap, and he's hit a ball and he's in a baseball field. But that's way too much information. I'm being, and it might not be ready. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to see exactly what the right caption is though. Analyze the image, and it says, I think it's a baseball player preparing to swing a bat. That is better than a human being, and also I'm going to train it now. How well did I do? Very well. And we know this is better for a human being because we're still part of that competition. Now, what we did is we took image recognition and linguistics and trained them over each other to create linguistic image captioning for novel captioning. And this is available in computer vision with Azure Cognitive Services. Also, free for the first 1,000 tries. Sorry, 1,000,000 images. It's insanely free. And let's try another one quickly. So I'm going to take another one here. Oh, yes, I'm a sandwich. It looks like a grilled cheese sandwich with ham or something like that. And it's got some sesame seeds and some cheese. And let's see what I think it's a sandwich on a cutting board, because that's the important thing, the context and the background and being able to give a proper representation. You did brilliantly. Thank you so much. And that's everything I wanted to kind of show you today. Let's go back to our slides here. And now I want to enable you to play from current slides to go forward in this and to challenge you. Conclusion, empathy, how to create it with your persona spectrums, become that person. Solve for one, extend to many. Shift left, take your systems, test in the beginning, test at the end, test forever that you want. And then finally, I'm going to just admit your people there. Finally, the most important, automate and AI. How do you know how well you're doing? You know that you're doing well because you're testing constantly, and your AI is also giving you the ability to test with you and to change the entire process if necessary. Take advantage of AI and really leverage with the fourth industrial revolution to be able to do that. All of that I've said to you in Microsoft.com/accessibility. Follow me at Rory Preddy. and start your journey, do that fast pass, take your websites, and then understand exactly how you can help your audience, your customers, and your developers. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Roy. This is such an amazing session. It was so full of energy, and whenever I'm going to encounter someone, and I probably will, that is not convinced how important accessibility is, I'll refer them to this session. It was amazing. Thank you so much. And in the chat, it was mostly just compliments. So definitely check the chat and read them back, because it was one compliment after the other. But unfortunately, no questions. Luke, do you have questions from another channel there, from YouTube perhaps?
No, we did not receive any questions. So I guess it was a crystal clear what you all told us.
Well, normally we will ask you, what is the main thing we'll start with? What is the one thing we have to do? But you already told us we have to use the tools you showed us. You showed us the demo, and just start using them and fix those issues.
Do you remember in the beginning I said to you, learn from diversity? Learn from diversity by hiring diverse people. And when you hire diverse people, they become advocates to be able to change the world. And that's something that Microsoft believes. We have hiring for autism, and we have a diversity hiring, accessibility hiring team. And once you do that, the people will show you the way, because all of us actually have a story to tell. And I strongly believe that if you look deep within your systems and the people, you can hire the best people to become advocates for your own systems to become accessible.
Best advice, I think. Thank you so much. So, any last minute questions? I'm just going to look at the chat. Still not anything. Well, we had a lot of viewers, so it was a very clear presentation with the best advice ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cool. Well, let's move on to the second session then.
Yeah, Luke, I'm not sure. I'm seeing the videos running, so I'm not really sure what everyone's seeing, but I think we have a small break, right? A couple of minutes.
Video playing.
So I think we have a couple of minutes, right? Until the next session from Andre. We will talk about blogging using Markdown and Azure DevOps. And we'll kick off at, is it 7:45?
If we follow the schedule, it will.
Yeah, well, we most definitely will. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Andre.
Yeah, and we're back again. Hi, Andre.
Hi.
Welcome. Great to have you.
Yeah,
Welcome.
We
Very good you could
already
be
had
here.
you quite a few times, but then as a visitor.
yeah, that's right. And
Yeah,
now
so-
on the other side,
Yeah,
that's nice.
yeah, but yeah, really nice to have you now as a speaker at this meetup. It's very, very cool. And yeah, you're going to give a session about a very hands-on subject.
Yeah, I started, I think 2 years ago. I started with, I wanted to start a blog, and then I looked to Jekyll, but it was not so active development. And then I switched over to Hugo, and I was also starting at work with DevOps. So I was thinking, yeah, let's do it together.
Yeah,
So,
cool. And do you also use this at clients already in production
yeah,
side? Or,
yeah. So.
Cool. Well, I'm really looking forward to it.
Me as well.
So I would say take it away and have fun.
I will take my screen. Yeah, I told already a little bit. I'm since 2 years now Windows Insider MVP. I work at a sourcing company, and there I'm a consultant working mainly with Office 365 and Azure. You can find my blog on the Cloud Admin EU. You can reach me at Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I have the agenda where I explain the Markdown and the Hugo, how that works, and then I will give a demo. After that, I will explain something about DevOps, about pipelines and build and release, and will demo that also and show that I do a change and how that looks. Markdown is a markup language to create with text easy documentation, and that was started in 2004. And it's readable, it's wide, and it's mainly used for documentation in the dev environments. Online forums, instant messaging, documentation, and README files. Like on GitHub, you see that many. That it's all Markdown. Even Microsoft Docs, it's all Markdown. There are some basics. I take it from the GitHub mastering from Markdown. And what you can do very easily, you have a text document, and you do, for example, 2 stars, and then your word, and again 2 stars, and then you get it bold, or you do 1 star and the word and another star, and then you get italic. So can you do many things of that. You can also integrate some code, so you use backticks, and between that you do your code, and it shows your code in the right way, and you can give how the code has to look. So in this example, in the screen, in the middle screen, you for JavaScript. You can use hashtags, and then you get the headings, so you can give different headings in your document. Hugo, yeah, I told already about it. I looked first to Jekyll, but it was not so interesting to me because there was not so many development in it, and yeah, I like always to be on the edge of the new things. So then I looked at Hugo, and you have also some other, but this is the most used, I think, and you can very easily with Markdown build your websites. It can be blog or other websites that businesses uses. I will show you later also something how it looks, how the structure is built. So. I have here on the right, I don't know if it's seen, my Git that I have running in the repo in DevOps, in Azure DevOps, and there you have a structure of Hugo that you can download, and then you can start with some examples. So you have, for example, the configuration file. I have to look now where it was. And there you fill in some basic information, and that's all getting, when you run a server, it's rendered into a folder with all the HTML files that can be rated by Hugo when you run Hugo. So you have some content folder. There you have the, for example, talk. You can also use in Hugo. You can use templates, and you have many choice from different templates. I'm in this case used first the default of Hugo, and then I was thinking, yeah, I wanted to have another look and feel of my blog. So I switched to the academic template, and there you have some, I can show that on my site. So when you, I have here my blog post, but I have also, for example, my events. I just did today put the Ignite on it. And when you look then in the, here in the talk folder, so there are all the events, and there I have also, I will click this, I have here the new one that I just created, and there is a Markdown. And that this is also again a template where you fill in some information. So I did, for example, the date. When you look on the website, you see that it's from 1 o'clock till 7 o'clock, and that's of course not right. So I can change that. So I can change here from, for example, from 9 o'clock till 21. And when I save this, and I have running here in Windows Terminal, I have running the Hugo site. So it's building real time the site, and it's running on the local on my machine itself, so I can right away see what, when I change something, what's happening with it. So now I can see that it changed for to 9 hours in the morning till 21. So it changed right away. So now I looked how it looks, and yeah, I'm happy with that. And of course, now I only have it local running, but I want to have it, of course, in my site running. I have also here my other site. This is the real site. And when I look at the events, it's still at 1 o'clock. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you please zoom your code a bit more so then it's better readable for the viewers?
Yeah, 1 moment.
Thanks.
Better like this?
Yeah.
Okay. So I changed here the time, and that was seeable in the website. So now I want to do the change further. So I say git.
Could you inzoomen?
What you say?
Could you maybe zoom a little bit in your code?
I think it's like this.
Yeah, that is way better.
And then I say git add. So it will see that there is a change. That's why it now changed. Also, I did make my prompt more nicely, so I can also see have integration with Git repository to see what happens, and you see that it's changing from green to yellow, and there is now one change. So I can say git commit. Updated the event. Typing in presentations is always challenging with new time. And then I will look, and then I did it in a special branch, so I don't do it in my master or main in this case. Then now I push it to the Git to the repo in Azure DevOps. So when I go now to look in Azure DevOps. When I go in repos, I don't know, maybe I have to zoom this also a little bit. Oh. Then you see that there is a new pull request. I can do a pull request, and when I now do a pull request, it will go to do a build and a release, and I will go now to my spreadsheet, to my PowerPoint again. So I'm using Azure DevOps for it, but you can, many people also, I saw also someone in the audience that uses actions from the Git, from GitHub. Many people put it also on GitHub pages. So and also people use the GitHub repository. I use the DevOps because it's already started some long ago, and then GitHub was not so for this. So maybe in the future I will look if I will switch or stay. You have a pipeline. So in the pipeline, I go to build on an agent, and an agent is a machine where the commands are executed. So I go to install Hugo on that machine. Then I go to run Hugo to make the HTML content, and with that I will get an artifact. It's a zip file where all the information is in it. and that will all these steps will happen in the build pipeline. So I make some screenshots, but you can see that I did the last blog that I did about PowerShell with F7. And I have also running enable continuous integration. So when this pipeline running, it will go to the release pipeline also. And here you can see the steps that I do in this release pipeline. So I install the Hugo Extended, I check for version, build the site, then copy it to a staging directory, and then it will create the artifact. And I used Ubuntu. I used also in the past the Windows, but I found that Ubuntu agent runs a little bit faster. Then you get a release pipeline, so it will pick up the artifact, and there I configured my Azure app service because I publish my site on an Azure app service, and now also sometime now you can do it in a storage account, and you don't need app service. But there were in the past things not possible. I wanted my custom domain, and then I had to do tricks with CDN to get that working, and then it stopped at a given moment. And I wanted to have also some other things like not www for my domain name, so that I can use the cloudadmin.eu. So yeah, I stay now with this. And then I will show again what will happen. So I will now say I will create a pull request. And that will that I can create. I can also have reviewers, so that when there are more people, they have to review the change that I did, and then it will be going further. But yeah, I'm all alone, so I don't do that. So I will create, and I will say approve and complete. Now it will go to merge my change, and I will leave it. I will not delete it. You can also delete the branch. So now it go to merge to the master. I renamed it also to the main, because people say better use main instead of master. Then it will go to merge. When I go now to the pipelines, so I will go first to the build pipeline. When I look, I see that it's now running, or queued at least. And I see that it's now running. When I look, then I will see all the steps what it go to do. So it go to install now, it installed it go to build the site, so it will generate the zip file with all the HTML in it. That will take a little bit some. Probably I can more optimize. I want to look in the future, because now I do every time the whole site, but maybe I can do it only the changes. But yeah, there I have to spend time into how that's possible. Now it's going to generate the zip file, the artifact, what I call it. And then I do also some metadata, so you can get the batches, and that you can do in your overview from your what Rory also showed in the beginning of the page. This I mean, that's why I want to look if I can do not the whole site every time, because that takes some time, especially when you're waiting now for it. I don't know if there are questions, Luc or Roland.
Yeah, maybe we can do a couple of questions in between. That's a good one. If you do cost-wise, what will this setup, running it in Azure DevOps and having it the site run in Azure, what is the monthly bill for such a thing?
For DevOps, I don't pay because it's free for 5 users, and you have to do then very many runs on your agent before you have to go to pay. And because I do it on Azure web apps, that I pay, and I think I pay something like, all in all, with web app because I have custom domains and that sort of things, is something like €17 or something in a month. So
excellent. So it's still very manageable cost-wise.
Yeah, you can do it cheaper. Also, other people did sessions about it. When you do it on an Azure storage account, then it's in some euros a month. But then you have some restrictions.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question from the chat as well. What do you find hardest to figure out for this entire process?
Yes, a couple of things, and you can do with. I can show. No, that's in the. You can run. You can. First I did everything in not in folders, so I had all my posts, and you can still see that in my. You can see that here. I didn't do it at a given moment. I started to put it in year folders and then in month, so it's a little bit more overview. And that you have also all to figure out in Hugo, and also that you can do like this. You make bundles, and what you do is you take archetypes, and there you make, for example, a talk bundle. I did it today. So I say I want a default index with where is here everything empty, and I want also default an image folder in it, so I don't every time have to do that with hand. I can show another post. When I go to post, for example, from last year, then you have the images, and that's maybe not so good post. So I have all the images in a separate image folder, and when I look at, it's a little bit. So you title that. You can put in a subtitle, you can tags that will be used with search engines. You can do categories, so you get categories, and then you have your markdown code, so you use for your images, how they show up. And
very cool. But we interrupted your demo, right? So
yeah, that don't matter. I think it's now ready. So it's nearly ready. Analyzing. Then we can go to the release pipeline. So it will see that it's, and this is from, yeah, this is from now. So I can click here. And it's already run. So you can look in the things. So it's pushed, no, it cleaned up previous task. So here it put take the zip file and put it on the Azure web service. And here it downloaded so you can see it's all HTML. So what Hugo does, it takes your uses the framework from Hugo and does all the converting from your Markdown and from your there is also some programming language in Hugo, and converts that to HTML, and that's then copied to your with pipeline to the website. So when I go now to the live website, I go to events, it's changed. So I didn't do anything manual copying manual files or something. So I use Git from the command line. You can do it also in Visual Studio Code. But I find it more fast to do it. I like it to do it through the command line. And I use Azure DevOps. What I said, when you stay under the 5 users, it's for free. I use Code, Visual Studio Code, to do my Markdown files. I use also as a Windows insider. I'm very fond of Windows Terminal. And you have the Hugo site where you also can find many, I can show. So, for example, what I talked about the themes, there are really, really many. So, yeah. It's unbelievable how many, and so you can choose one that you like, what fits your needs. When you see how many categories, I think I used the minimalistic one for some time, and then I go to the, I don't know if it's here. Can I search here also? Probably not. No. So I use this theme. And there is also, you can download it, you can see how it looks, and you can, they have also, that I like about the academic, they have also a support forum where you can ask questions and maintainer George will really fast react. So that's also nice when you start with it.
Very cool. And can I ask a question on the temp? Do you know if they are checked for accessibility, or is this an issue? Is this to tie it back to Rory's session?
Maybe I have to look into it. That was also interesting. I did also some other things with you can do checks on websites that you validated that you use the right things, and that was also when some people ask if are there some difficult things that were difficult, because then you have to do something like programming, and that costs more time. But maybe that's also interesting to look in. So, for sure.
Perfect. And there's also another question. You showed us some sites, some references. What is the one blog we have to read to start using this? Is this a blog you wrote yourself, or do you?
I'm busy with a blog to do the whole step what I showed to how you can completely build it. But I do that also in my spare time. But I hope to not a long time to publish it. So I will walk you from A till Z through all the steps, because what I was running against was one person blog about that, and other there about that piece, and then you have to go on all the sites to find the puzzle, how to solve it. So I'm busy with it, but that costs many time, because you have to make all screen prints and
Well, we definitely we'll be looking forward to that one then.
Yes, for sure. So I think that was my. So I'm within the time, even time.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice. Yeah.
It's very cool. Yeah, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I actually had no clue. I've never seen you go in action, so. It was very informative. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Luke, any last minute questions from the chat I missed?
Let me have a quick look. No, I don't think so.
Well, if there are any other questions, they can probably reach out through your blog or through Twitter or
for
active.
sure.
So.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, André. And we're back again. Hello. And we are making us up for the last sessions with 2 speakers. So this is really nice. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the session. I think nowadays everybody should use infrastructure as code. So yeah, I think Project Bicep is looks really promising, and I think it's really going to make our work easier on building ARM templates. So I'm really looking forward to see it in action. Hopefully, maybe don't know what you're going to do, but how did you came across this Project Bicep? Is this something you already used, or?
Yeah, well, I personally started using it when it was at the 0.1 version back in August last year. I saw a session at, I think it was Ignite or some other conference where they showed it at first. So I thought, well, this is really interesting because I have like 3 or 4 years of experience with building ARM templates, and I know how complex it is, and we'll get into that in this session as well. But that's when I first saw the power of these two and how it really empowers the actual JSON template, as we'll see in this session as well. So yeah, really excited about it. How about you, Esther?
Well, I have to admit that I just panicked with my ARM templates not performing without giving away too much spoilers. So I just called up Freek, and then he came with this awesome solution called Project Bicep. So that's how our story started.
Cool.
Well, really nice. Well, yeah, I would say take it away and have fun.
Yeah, let me just see if I can quickly share my screen. Hopefully that should work without too much problems. Always need to figure out which screen.
How many screens do you have?
Now 3, and now I cannot find. Okay, there it is. So this should now show the presentation.
Yeah, it shows the agenda. Yeah,
yes.
There we go.
Let me get back to the right order.
Great. So yeah, thank you for having us. First of all, happy to be here to speak at this conference at the user group again. I think we both have been here before, Esther.
Yeah, presenting. I did a session once, but that's a long time ago. So.
Okay. So the next 45 minutes will be about ARM templates, JSON templates, like we said, but also Project Bicep. So we'll see how it actually empowers your existing infrastructure as code solutions, projects, etc. Quick introduction to myself. My name is Freek Bresson. I'm from the Netherlands. I primarily work with application and desktop delivery using remoting technology. So not so much in the ARM and JSON space directly, but more in the RDS, VDI, remote app, and of course Windows virtual desktop space. But I like to do a lot of automation, infrastructure as code as well. I've been an MVP for many years, and well, excited to be here to share some knowledge with you guys today. So with me is Esther. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I've been an end-user computing consultant for over 20 years. So I have a lot of experience creating virtual desktops, which definitely comes in hand in these times that are challenging. But for the last couple of years, I kind of shifted to more automation and automated deployments. So I've been happily discovering ARM templates, REST APIs, working with JSON, and thanks to Freek, also ready to get started with Project Bicep.
Great. So let's dive right in and take a look at the agenda that we have for you guys today. So we'll start off by doing a quick introduction into automation in general, and where this is in the overall architecture of Azure in this case. Then we'll take a look at ARM templates and JSON. So we'll see some of the challenges with that, some of the power of those templates as well. And then we'll transition to the actual Project Bicep stuff. As we'll see, we'll build upon the existing ARM and JSON configurations, templates, and existing projects that you have. And a lot of demos. So you asked for this action. We sure have that in this session. So we're going to do all these demos live. So it's going to be fun. And yeah, hand it over to you, Esther, to do the introduction first.
Yeah, sure. So we figured to better explain the whole automation and where Project Bicep comes in, we needed to start at the root. So we're going to just have a quick introduction on Azure Resource Manager. The reason why we want to focus on Azure Resource Manager first is because it's basically the heart of Azure. So each and every way that you communicate with Azure, whether it's through the portal or through CLI or PowerShell, the different SDKs that are available, or your REST APIs, you will always hit your Azure Resource Manager in some programmatic way. And the Azure Resource Manager, in its turn, uses the different resource providers to make sure that it configures the compute resources or your networking or storage. And as you can tell, I'm mostly focused from a server virtualization background. But of course, it also enables the Kubernetes and all the other cool functionality and services that are available in Azure. So to further dive into ARM, of course, we had to start, if we're talking about automation and not going through the portal, we had to get familiar with Azure Resource Manager templates, or ARM templates, as I like to call them. And one of the things that hits you first is that those templates are built with JSON formatting. And if you look at the first template format, it still seems pretty straightforward, where you have your parameters section for all the input values that you want to provide, variables for making sure that you have quick and shorten references to objects and resources within your script or within the template. Functions, if you want to use your own built custom functionality in your template, and the resources section that specifies all the Azure resources that you want ARM to create. And for your own purposes, you can also use outputs to make sure that after ARM has deployed your resources, it does return the output that you specified. But if we're zooming in on an ARM template, and please do not be afraid if this kind of overwhelms you, because I have to admit it definitely overwhelmed me the first time I saw that, because I was eager to get started and build my own ARM templates, and then I saw all these different template for the template sections, which kind of discouraged me a little. So I did some more research and was very fortunate to find a quick start guide provided by Microsoft that basically tells you that you can use your Azure portal and the marketplace to, instead of just manually going or still going through all the different tabs to provide all the information to the Azure Resource Manager, you can also use this to create your own custom template by not hitting create, the create button on this screen, but to click on that small, not always very visible link at the bottom saying download the template for automation. And what it does is it guides you through a download page that shows you not only the ARM template that is already pre-created with all the information from the forms and the information that you provided, but it also allows you to download a parameters file that has all the specified information that you just previously entered. So you just simply hit that download button to download your template and parameters file, and then you can have some fun. And when I say fun, I mean that this allows you to have a cool base ARM template that you can then fine-tune and customize to your own needs. And in order to do that, Microsoft also provides a reference guide, which gives great input on all the customizations that you can make for each and every resource within the template. So it provides you with a template format. So it has the example code that you can add to your template. And it even specifies all the different objects and properties that you can configure within the template. So that should give you all the information that you need to place whatever customizations you want to make within the context of an ARM template. And as you see in an example, this is just a quick way for me to add a DNS server registration to my VNet, which is one of the prerequisites for deploying a WVD environment. Another cool resource that we definitely wanted to share with you is that there are special learning paths on Microsoft Learn for building your own ARM templates or using ARM templates for automated deployments. So feel free to check it out, because it will definitely help you to get started and to fully understand all the capabilities of ARM templates and the context that you can use them within. And last but not least, for those of you like me that love to have a base to get started with, there's also an Azure Quick Starts templates library, which hosts almost 1,000 templates that are already pre-configured and ready to be used. In this example, it starts with deploying a simple Windows VM, but it can also be deploying an entire infrastructure focused on maybe creating your own domain or even Kubernetes services. And the cool part about the templates is that you can easily incorporate that in, well, I love PowerShell as my scripting language, but in an automated process. So you just simply provide the template that you want to use and a parameter file. And then in my case, I use the new Azure Resource Group deployment commandlet to deploy my template and push it to the Azure Resource Manager. And this is the step where I normally introduce a really cool demo on how quickly it can be used to deploy your resources in Azure. But this is also the moment where I kind of panicked because my ARM template wasn't working as expected. And this is just the standard template that I downloaded from the Azure portal. And then apparently it didn't really work as well for me as I hoped it to be. So even diving into the error messages that clearly states what the error was, I still felt a bit overwhelmed, to be honest, because if you really look at an ARM template, it's first of all, it's a lot of lines of code to go through. And in my case, I had to go back and forth between the resources section, the variables and the parameters to figure out what the exact values were of some of the input. Especially because this template already used linked templates, which means that it basically sends you to another template that is out there somewhere on the internet. To be honest, this is the moment where, as I said, I kind of panicked and called Freek for help, because he's not only my WVD ninja, but as you'll soon discover, he's now also my bicep ninja, because he came up with a great solution. And just as a little disclaimer, I do have ARM templates that work perfectly. So this is not a session about dishing the use of ARM templates or stopping you to use that altogether. It's just another way of showing you how you can easily create those ARM templates, because both me and Freek are kind of convinced that the ARM templates will not disappear instantly, because, as we said at the beginning, the Azure Resource Manager is still the heart of Azure. So we'll definitely need to be able to talk in ARM templates to the Resource Manager. But as I mentioned, basically I panicked, I called Freek, and he came up with this awesome solution. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Freek can take over and show you all the fun that he has shown me with Project Bicep.
Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen. So you should be able to see that now, and that was a fun introduction. I actually enjoyed that you actually put that error still in, because that's something that we all ran into, right? We've all seen those errors when templates fail, and going back into the JSON templates, and like you said, going into all of these linked templates and debugging that. So it's I like that you actually kept that in the deck. That's awesome.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that it probably took me 4 hours till like 2 a.m. to to debug and to figure out where the error was.
Yeah, well, you found it, so that's good. Right, so let's transition now to Project Bicep, and let's first do a quick introduction in case you're not or a little bit less familiar about the technology, or maybe just heard about it. What is it exactly? Project Bicep is a domain-specific language and specifically designed for Azure. So it's a DSL, which means that it allows you to declare your resources in a declarative way when deploying them to the Azure portal. So that's obviously similar to how we've been doing that with ARM templates, like Esther just showed you previously. So just to make that clear, Project Bicep is not going to replace ARM templates in any way. It's going to extend it and build on top of it. So its goal is to drastically simplify the way we're authoring our templates and our JSON templates and our ARM templates, like we just showed you, taking away a lot of the complexity, a lot of the overhead, and trimming down those files to exactly what is needed, making it much more readable and much more easy to author. So it's basically a transparent layer on top of ARM templates. And as we'll see in a demo, it also allows you to transpile your biceps files right into JSON files. So that's the reason why JSON is not going away. So where do we position Project Bicep in the overall infrastructure as code stack, as we saw on the diagram, we started with in this session? So again, we have the Azure Resource Manager, the blue bar in this diagram. It's still the heart of any deployment of any infrastructure as code deployment. So it's basically our entry point into the resource providers that lead us to the various resources we can create and update and delete, but also things like Arc and Kubernetes and GitHub, etc. On top of that blue bar, we still have our ARM templates. So we are still feeding those ARM templates towards the Azure Resource Manager to be able to deploy our resources in a declarative way. So what Bicep does is add an additional layer on top of the ARM templates, which allows you to not have to worry about the ARM templates, but you author your Bicep files instead. And they literally have the extension .bicep, which I thought was kind of funny. We have Bicep files that we start with, and then we transpile it into an ARM template. And that ARM template is then fed into the Azure Resource Manager. That also means that you can use any existing way you're deploying your ARM templates, whether it's like Esther uses PowerShell or DevOps or directly feeding those templates into the ARM portal. You can still do that because we're not replacing ARM in any way. It also has a great modular approach, and we'll take a look at that in a demo as well, which allows you to extract pieces of those code and put them into separate files, separate modular files to reuse them in other projects or in other environments. It's also fully open source and fully transparent, so the entire project, the entire source code is on GitHub and allows you to contribute to that GitHub code as well, to provide examples, to do bug fixes, etc. We're going to share that link to the GitHub at the end of the session as well. So how do you then get started? So if you have the experience with ARM and you want to transition to this Project Bicep, or if you do not have anything with ARM and just want to get started with Project Bicep, what do? It's basically two separate steps. First, you have to install the CLI, which is needed to be able to do that transpiling from the Bicep file towards the JSON file, and it's these lines of codes. Now, full disclosure, I did not come up with this code. This is just available on the docs and GitHub pages, but just to give you an idea how you can do that installation automatically on your development machine. Now we have a second step, which is the VS Code extension. And although this is an optional component, I can really encourage you to start installing it because it allows you to do things like tab completion and IntelliSense, etc., to make the authoring even better inside VS Code as your editor. And that's it. So from that moment on, you can start creating your first Bicep file, transpile it into ARM, and then feed it into the Azure portal.
Yeah, and this is why I just love Freek doing the demos, because it already starts with something so easy that you feel that you should just at this moment already get started with Bicep. So
No
take
pressure.
it away.
No pressure. Right, so here we go. So you should be able to see my VS Code, and I have here the install.
No, not yet.
You're not seeing it?
Oh, no, the feed is behind.
Oh,
My apologies.
Okay. So we have the installation PS1 that we just had in the demo as well. So basically what I did on my machine is run this code and then have the CLI and the VS Code extension available. Optionally, you can also go into the marketplace and install it right here from the Bicep link and just install it from this wizard. So let's get started. Let's open up our first Bicep file, which is called main.bicep, which is an empty file. But it is actually a valid Bicep file, although it doesn't contain any content. It's a valid Bicep file, and we'll show you. So I'll just put in the Bicep version command here just to show you what the most recent version that we're at right now. So it's 0.2.328. But we'll take a look at the versioning and why we are at this stage at the end of the session as well. So the way you transpile this file into a JSON file is that you say Bicep build, and then the name of the file. So in this case, it's going to be example2. And it's then going to transpile it obviously in a second because it doesn't contain any content. But if you take a look at the JSON that it creates, here is already that empty skeleton of any JSON template. So this should look familiar if you have ARM and JSON template experience. I could feed this template into the Azure portal. It wouldn't deploy anything, but it's a valid template to start with. So let's go ahead and enter some code inside this main Bicep file. And let's create our first resource. So let's create a storage account. We'll give it a name, STG. And we'll browse to storage account. And as you can see, I already have that IntelliSense going on here. So I can take a look at the objects types that I have available. So let's select one, do the equal sign and the brackets. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have the variable, so the resource type, as well as the API version into a single string, which was already different strings in the ARM template. So if I do now a control space, I get an overview of the properties that this resource wants to have. So for example, I can specify the name. Let's since it is Azure Thursday, let's do that. I need to specify the kind of resource storage account. So let's do that, a blob storage. I obviously need to specify a location. So let's do East US, simply because that's the one that is easy to type. I was going to say, and then I made a typo. But and the last property is the what is the SKU, right? And the SKU is multiple properties. So as soon as we hit that column, we get the brackets here, and I know I need to specify the name. So I get an easy selection and have the previous LRS. And that's it. So we now created our first resource, which is a storage account in the Azure portal. So saving this file and running the build process again, we have the JSON file, and let's open it up side by side so we can see some comparison. Now you probably noticed that the one on the left is way easier to read than the one on the right, which has all of these brackets and semicolons or commas going on, right? So we already went from 8 lines of code towards 17 on the right-hand side. So you saw me use a lot of the IntelliSense inside the VS Code. Full disclosure, that is also available for ARM templates, right? The drop-down list with the resource types, etc. But what JSON doesn't have and what Bicep does have is it allows me to point to a resource that I previously declared. So let me show you an example. If I take a look at an output I want to create, let's call it STG out. And that's going to be a string. And that's going to be equal to, and as you can see, I have the STG available here, which is the resource I have just declared. So I can do STG properties, primary endpoint, and then blob. And that's it. So I'm now referring to a property of the object that I previously declared. So taking a look at what that looks like inside JSON, if we transpile it again, take a look at the easy way I can reference that, that property versus using the reference function, using the resource ID function, then having to concatenate this string, taking a look at the variable, and then doing all of these stuff, right? So it's a lot of a lot of magic, a lot of voodoo going on here in the JSON side, not really readable compared to the one on the left.
Yeah, that would definitely save me a couple of hours.
Probably, yeah. So adding a parameter is just as easy. I can do param, and I can say, for example, the STG name. So let's make it a parameter instead of a static value. It's obviously going to be a string. And let's also give it a default value, which in this case is that same Azure Thursday. And then we can replace this parameter with simply that, even without the quote. Let's save it again. Let's do a transpile again and take a look at the easy way to define a parameter on a single line, including the default value, whereas the way you would do that in ARM with all of the brackets and the commas and the semicolons going on. So just to give you an example of how easy it is to get started versus the JSON that we all experienced over the last couple of years.
Yeah, don't make me start a comment about flexing your muscles and showing off the power of bicep.
I won't. So let's shift gears and take it one step further even and take a look at a bicep code that deploys multiple objects. In this case, a virtual machine. So we just saw the first bicep file with a single object with only one parameter. This is already some more advanced stuff. So as you can see, I have a couple of parameters and variables here that I declare with a couple of default values as well. And also notice that it's super easy to also concatenate these values with each other. So for example, if I want to create the default VNet nickname, I can take the previously declared variable and just add the postfix, in this case, -nick, just like that. We'll take a look at what it looks like in JSON in just a second. What I also want to show you is that inside this bicep file, I have multiple resources that I'm going to be creating. So I have a VNet that I'm creating here. I have a virtual NIC, and I have a VM. So if you're familiar with VMs in Azure, you probably know that I cannot create a virtual machine without having a network adapter. And I cannot create a network adapter without having a VNet and a subnet in order to have that point to that as well. So that means that we need to tell the ARM engine eventually in which order these objects need to be created. So first the VNet, then the network adapter, and then the VM. But as you can see inside my bicep, I do not anywhere have that declaration there, that I have a dependency on these objects. So how does that work? Let's go ahead and build this file. So it's going to be example number 4. And let's open up these files side by side again. And again, I will not keep on saying this, but we went from 94 lines towards 125. So we're getting close to a huge JSON file. But what I wanted to show you is, well, first of all, doing the concatenation stuff, which is just like this, compared to the magic that's going on here to do that. And this is even the more simple one. We've seen much more complex concatenations. But what I wanted to show you is the network interface here and how these objects depend on each other. So notice that the JSON code actually contains the depends on section. So this is us telling the ARM engine the creation of this object depends on the creation of another object. But I do not have that in my bicep code. So how did it end up there? The reason is that I'm using the property here again. So I'm specifying the VNet, the ID of the VNet, and this VNet is actually coming from the resource right here. So by doing that, the bicep engine, the transpile engine, knows that it needs to have the depends on section in there. Let me ask that for you. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on here with the resource ID function, and again some static values and the VNet name. So it automatically added that for us as it depends on section. You can still, of course, do explicit depends ons if you still have other objects that are dependent of those objects. You can still declare them like this. But for the most part, you probably won't, because you will always be referencing to properties of another resource.
So a lot less chance of having errors in your ARM templates.
A little less chance, yeah. I wouldn't say a lot. But yeah, it definitely helps in authoring because the depends on section is definitely something that you forget, and you You run into that when you are actually deploying or doing the what if towards the Azure portal, when you realize, oh, wait a minute, these objects depend on each other. So it's a pretty cool feature that they have that as an implicit in there now.
Yeah, for those of you who are watching the recording, if you go back to the screen with the errors of my ARM template, it was focused on the network interface card not being there. So somehow I missed the depends on.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so let's take it even one step further and take a look at the modular approach. But before we do that, let's actually deploy something that we just created. So I have the Azure portal here. And what I have here is an empty resource group. It doesn't contain any objects yet. And just to show you that these transpiled versions actually work, let's deploy this the JSON file that creates the VM. So in this case, I'm using the AZ resource group deployment PowerShell commandlet, pointing to the resource group name, and then pointing to the version 4 example of the JSON. So not passing the bicep, but passing the actual transpiled JSON. So let's go ahead and run that. And it asks me for a local admin of this machine. I'm just going to type some random characters here because I'm not going to use this VM. But let's switch to the Azure portal and take a look at what it is deploying. And now we have the deployment of our virtual machines with the 3 objects. So first the virtual network, then the network adapter, and now the virtual machine, because of those dependence on sections in that in the JSON code. But just to show you that in the end, we're still dealing with JSON. We're still passing those JSON templates towards the Azure portal. So it's going to probably take a couple of seconds to finish, and we'll see that same result in this in the dialog as well. So while we wait for that to finish, let's take a look at the last example is doing the modular approach. So these were all just single bicep files doing a single deployment towards a single resource group. But what if I have multiple resource groups, multiple objects, and multiple dependencies in there? And as a matter of fact, the demo just finished. So let's take a look at the portal. It actually deployed and it is available. So going back to the resource group, here's that virtual machine with a network adapter, the disk, and the network. So let's go to the modular one. So I have a main.bicep file to start with. And as you can see, this is already a pretty big bicep file. Even for bicep, it is 300 lines of code. But what it does is it has a big section of parameters. And as you can see, I have a lot of default values here as well. That's just for demo sakes, right? Normally you would extract these and have them inside a parameter file when you are deploying it towards Azure. But just for the demo, I have left them inside here. I also have a couple of secure strings here with passwords and Azure ID, tenants, etc. And the thing that I'm doing here is I'm setting the target scope to subscription. So normally when you deploy a JSON file towards the Azure portal, the target scope is usually a resource group, right? But now we're deploying towards multiple resource groups. So we need to make sure that the scope of this deployment is the subscription level and not a separate resource group. Speaking of resource groups, we are actually creating them inside this bicep file as well. So we have here the resource declaration for all the resource groups. So we're taking a post and prefix and then having a network one, the backplane for my Windows virtual desktop in this case, WVD hosts, monitoring one, a file services one, and a key vault one. So about 8 or 9 different resource groups we are creating from this main bicep file. We still have other objects, other resources we're creating here. For example, a VNet definition. We're creating a role assignment in here. But now we get to the module part. So anything above this is just another bicep file with parameters, with variables and resources. But we now have our first declaration of a module. So this means that I'm creating a module referring to a module, which is actually another bicep file. So in case you're wondering, there's absolutely no difference between the main bicep itself and a modular bicep file. There's nothing you need to do for that. It's just another bicep file. But since we're referencing it from a main bicep file, it is included in this deployment. So we need to specify the file name and, of course, the scope where we are deploying this. And then we are going to pass all the parameters to this module. So these parameters were all collected above in this file as parameter for this deployment, and then we are passing them to each of these modules. So this is just an example of the 6.1, but as you can see on the left-hand side, we have 6.1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 6, which contain different modules for different purposes. So I have my monitoring, my Azure Image Builder here, my file services, my key vault, etc. Notice I also have this numbering inside. Now that's not mandatory, that's just to make it easier to understand and to explain which module calls which other modules. So we have the main 6, which calls the 6.1, for example, but also the 6.2. And then inside the 6.2, I am, for example, creating some resources here, but I'm also calling other modules from this module to have a nested module in there, which is for the template VM and for the peering, etc. So that's the way these modules work. So let's go ahead and transpile this file. So again, we are going to say bicep build, and it's going to be example number 6. And if we open this file up, and I will not do it side by side because it's not easy to read, we end up with a JSON file containing 2,000, above 2,000 lines, which is interesting because we were starting with about 300. So how did that happen? Obviously,
we're just showing off now.
We are. So the reason that happens is that when we do the transpile of the main.bicep, it not only transpiles the main.bicep, but also all of the other modules that were called from that bicep file. All right, so this JSON file contains all of the resource declarations of all of these modules into one single JSON file. As you can see, it's a lot of code to read, right? But what I wanted to show you is the way it works. For example, let's take a look at the networking module. So here you see me call the module, for example, for the peering. So let's see if we can find that inside the JSON file. And what I want to show you is not this part, that we're actually having separate deployments here. So each module that we call from a bicep file eventually becomes a new nested deployment, in this case, an incremental deployment for the overall JSON. That's the one of the deployments that Esther also referred to as in her earlier talk about the incremental stuff that's going on. So let's, without further ado, let's actually deploy this into the Azure portal and see what happens. So in this case, I'm using the new AZ deployment because I'm creating multiple resource groups. So I cannot point to a specific one, but I need to point to the overall Azure subscription. And let's run it. And let's see what happens. So let's switch to the Azure portal again. And since we are creating a couple of resource groups, you should be able to see them show up here. So let's wait for that to happen.
So in the meantime, there was a question in the chat, Freek, that asks if Bicep is mainly used for resources or if it can also be used to set RBAC or policies.
Yeah, you can do that. So anything that you can do as a JSON template, you can do in Bicep. And we'll get to how far Bicep is in terms of feature parity at the end of this session. But basically, the end result will be that anything that you can declare using an ARM template, you can also do that using Bicep and then transpile it into ARM.
So, and another question from James is if there's a limit to the code lines in a Bicep file.
That's a great question. I didn't run into it. I don't think so, but if I do, I'll I'll let you know. Interesting question.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we have seen the creation of the resource groups, right? So just click refresh here, and all of these resource groups were created by the ARM templates. I'll just give you a couple of examples, also taking a look at the time we have left. So as an example, in this resource group, we have all of the objects, if you're familiar with that are needed for a Windows virtual desktop deployment with our host pools, application groups, and workspaces. What was created is also a couple of file services storage accounts. So I have my storage account here, and inside those storage accounts, different containers have been created for my scripts and for my Azure Image Builder software. I have my networking that we saw in an example before. So a VNet has been created here with a couple of subnets for my production and for my acceptance environment. And I have an entirely built Azure Image Builder process here as well, which allows me to create template images for my Windows Virtual Desktop deployments in this case. So I have my image definitions, my identities, and my shared image gallery. All of those were created just now by the Bicep project. So
we're production ready.
We are, yeah. Let's have some coffee and so it's going to take a couple of seconds more before this completes, but as you can see, it all went pretty smooth with all these objects being created in the Azure portal. So let's take a look at a really quick last demo. The last thing I want to show you is actually the decompiling of these objects to also show you that that is possible. So instead of starting and the actual deployment now, I'll just finish, as you can see, no errors here, so that looks good.
Rub it in.
Let's take a look at the decompile real quick. So let's now start with a Bicep file. And let's remove that because we're going to transpile back from the JSON. So here I have a JSON file, in this case, creating again a virtual desktop deployment with 3 resources in here. And what if I want to decompile this object back to a Bicep file? I simply say decompile, and then the name of this demo file, which is number 7. And as you can see here, the decompile is currently at a best effort process. It's not 100% full feature parity yet, but as you can see on the left-hand side, we now have a Bicep file being created from my JSON file. So this eventually will also make it possible for all of your existing JSON templates to be decompiled back to Bicep and then reused as Bicep going forward. Definitely a great feature for if you have a lot of ARM experience and want to take your existing ARM templates back to Bicep. So I think enough demos looking at the time. So let me switch back to the slide deck so we can provide you with some last information.
Yeah, I was going to say you can never have enough demos, Freek, but
yeah,
but due to the time, yeah.
Exactly. So we wanted to show you a little roadmap of where Bicep came from and where it's going to. So we started off with the 0.1 version back in August last year. And as you can see, it had a lot of features being added over the last couple of months. We are now at a 0.2.3.8 version, very close to the 0.3 version. And right now we are already at 90% feature parity compared to ARM templates, which is really, really great. So the one thing we are all waiting for, and if you have been developing ARM templates, you know this, is the loops. So being able to have a single piece of code run multiple times inside a loop without having declared multiple times. So that is definitely coming in the 0.3 version, which we are expecting somewhere this month or at least in early March to become available. And also the full decompilation of we just saw of the Bicep code back to the JSON code back to Bicep. So at that point, at the 0.3 version, it will probably be production ready as well. So just to explain what that means, Bicep itself is into preview right now, but that does not mean that all of the JSON code that we create with it is preview. That's not at all the case. So anything that you create with Bicep right now, the JSON file that you create, is ready for production use. It's just that some things will change in the syntax of the actual Bicep file, which could allow for some breaking changes. So speaking of those, I think, Esther, you wanted to cover the 2 breaking changes that we know about are going to happen soon.
Yes. So those of you who already follow Project Bicep on GitHub will see that there is a lot of feedback from the community directly being processed. So one of or 2 of the cool feature requests that they already incorporated is what they call parameter decorators. And this allows you to, as you can see, have an even more intuitive configuration of, in this example, the allowed values for your parameter. And that will make it definitely a lot more powerful to use Bicep in an intuitive way. The other thing, if we're looking at issue 569, is that one of the feedback was that we currently cannot reuse predefined parameters as output parameters or values. Currently, we need to create a separate variable for that. What you saw in the demo is that for the STG, Freek also said STG out when he was declaring the output. And what they are working on right now is to make sure that that parameter can be easily reused because it's using the same space, that it can easily be reused in an output declaration as well. So those are like two already very fast incorporated improvements for Bicep.
Yep. And the great thing is that these are all open. So these links and these issues here, they just go back to the GitHub page where you actually can see what's going on and what's going to happen in the near future. So to give you a call to action before you let you go is visit aka.ms/bicep. It is the short link to the Bicep GitHub page by Microsoft, which contains a lot of tutorials, documentation, example variables, a lot of community efforts as well. I, for one, have been contributing to that GitHub as well. So there's a lot of, I think, already hundreds of different Bicep files available for you to get started. So with that, we thank you for your attention. I hope it was valuable, and we sure as hell enjoyed it, right, Esther?
Yeah, and
fun.
I hope you forgive us for running over just like a minute.
1 minute.
So enjoy Bicep, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Freek or me, and we'd be happy to help you.
For sure.
Really cool. Thank you very much. Nice stuff. I will start using it.
Yeah, for sure.
We have.
We already have the pen.
We have one question left from the watches. How do you pull in the modules? Do they need to be stored locally, or can you reference them, and maybe from a Git repository?
Yeah, right now it's locally. So what you do is when you have your main Bicep file, the one that I showed you, and you make a reference to another module, that needs to be a file on the local system at that point. And that's because the transpilation process assumes that all those objects, all those files are available locally. But great question.
All right, cool, thanks. Well, I think no more questions, Roland?
No, that was the last one.
No.
I really loved the session, enter energy, and you do it very well together. It was, you always see these awkward handovers, and you did it brilliantly. It was a very good session. Thank you.
Really nice. Yeah,
That's awesome feedback. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's great.
Well, then this is already the end of the evening.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So thanks for watching, everybody. And of course, a big thanks to our sponsors down here. Not possible without them. And yeah, I think next month will also be amazing, Roland. What do you think?
Yeah, that will be a leap for us because we're going to try a bit of a different format, I think, with some very nice guests. And we'll, I think we'll do an Ignite Roundup. Is that what we're going to do? Does that describe it a bit? I think so. Yeah. Well, the days leading up to our event on the first day, there is Microsoft Ignite, of course, part 2. I don't know if that is the most accurate description. It is, I think, part 1 for 2021. But well, never mind. It's going to be 3 days of Ignite and a lot of information. And I think we'll pick what is most interesting. And we have some amazing guests planned. If it all works out. So. But we won't do any spoilers, I think, right?
No, just check our socials in the upcoming weeks, and just visit the next session again. So that would be great, I guess. Yeah. Well, then this is it for today.
It is.
Thank you all, and hopefully see you next time again.
Yes, thank you. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
toch een dongle niet.